They say luck is what you make of it, but when you've been sleeping under highway overpasses for 8 months with a 7-year-old daughter, you stop believing in luck altogether. You believe in day-old bread from the bakery's back door, in public restroom sinks where you can wash her school uniform at night, in library hours when she can pretend she's just another kid doing homework. But on a Tuesday morning in late March, I found a worn leather wallet wedged between 2 dumpsters behind a strip mall, and inside it, beyond the single $5 bill, was a photograph that shouldn't have mattered. A faded Polaroid of a narrow clapboard house, white paint peeling like birch bark, a porch sagging on one side. On the back, in careful pencil, 219 Oakmont, paid in full, for whoever needs it most. No name, no date. Just an address 3 miles away and a promise I didn't dare believe. I almost threw it away. I almost kept walking with that $5 toward the convenience store where Emma and I could split a hot dog and a carton of milk. But something in that photograph, the way afternoon light caught the porch boards, the stubborn clematis climbing the railing despite years of neglect, looked like it was waiting, like it remembered what hope felt like. So instead of the convenience store, I walked us toward Oakmont Street, Emma's hand small and trusting in mine, both of us pretending this was just another day of exploring, another game to pass the time before we returned to our spot beneath the bridge. But when we turned onto that street and saw 219 standing there, windows dark, yard overgrown, a condemned notice barely visible beneath ivy, I felt something shift in my chest. Fear, maybe. Or the beginning of something I'd forgotten how to name. Chapter 1. The Wallet. The dumpster smelled like spoiled milk and transmission fluid, which meant I was doing exactly what I'd sworn I'd never do, digging through trash while my daughter waited on the curb, singing to herself, pretending not to notice. 8 months ago I had a carpentry job, a studio apartment, a future shaped like something recognizable. Then the shop closed. The landlord filed eviction and the shelter system swallowed us whole before spitting us back out with a waiting list 6 weeks long. Now I scavenged. The wallet was wedged deep, leather cracked but quality, the kind you buy once and keep for decades. I expected credit cards, maybe a driver's license I could turn in for the reward. Instead, one $5 bill, a library card expired 3 years ago, and that photograph. The house in the image looked forgotten, the kind of place people drive past without seeing. But someone had written on the back in careful, shaking letters, 219 Oakmont, paid in full, for whoever needs it most. I showed Emma the photo while she ate the granola bar a church volunteer had handed her that morning. "What do you think?" I asked. She studied it with the seriousness she brought to everything now, that premature gravity that broke my heart daily. Is it a real place? Could be. Can we look? I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect her from another disappointment, another false lead, another closed door, but the address was only a few miles away, and we had nowhere else to be. "We can look," I said. We walked east along the service road, Emma's backpack, containing everything we owned that mattered, bouncing against her shoulders. She talked about the book she was reading at school, about the art project due Friday, about everything except where we'd sleep tonight. I half listened, watching for the street signs, expecting nothing. Oakmont Street appeared between a laundromat and a vacant lot. The houses were old, most well kept, but halfway down the block stood 219, a narrow 2-story clapboard, white paint peeling in long strips, porch sagging under the weight of years. Exactly like the photograph. A chain-link fence surrounded the yard, gate hanging open, and I could see the condemned notice nailed to the doorframe, orange and official and final. Emma stopped walking. "That's it. Looks like it. Can we go inside?" I should have said no. Should have walked away. Used that $5 for something practical. Found another overpass before dark. Instead, I pushed open the gate. The hinges screamed. In the overgrown yard I could see the remains of what had been a garden. Rose bushes gone wild. A rusted wheelbarrow on its side. The porch steps creaked under my weight but held. The condemned notice was dated 18 months ago. Structural damage, unauthorized entry prohibited. But when I tried the door, it wasn't locked. It swung inward on hinges that groaned like something waking up. Inside smelled like wet wood and old newspapers and something else. Possibility, maybe, or just desperate imagination. The front room was dim, wallpaper hanging in strips, floorboards warped but intact. Afternoon light came through the gaps in the boarded windows in precise, dusty columns. I could hear water dripping somewhere deeper in the house, a steady percussion that felt almost like a heartbeat. Emma stepped in behind me, her hand finding mine again. "It's like a castle," she whispered. "A broken castle. It's condemned, I said. We can't. But even as I said it, I was already imagining. One room, just one, that we could make weather-tight before dark. A space with a door that locked, walls that held. Not permanent, just enough to catch our breath, to sleep without one eye open, to give Emma one morning where she didn't wake up stiff from concrete. In the corner of the front room, I saw it. A cardboard box, lid closed, sitting on an old kitchen chair like someone had just set it there. On top, written in the same shaking hand as the photo's inscription, "Start here." What was inside that box? Chapter 2. The Decision. I opened the box while Emma explored the front room, her footsteps careful on the uncertain floorboards. Inside, a ring of keys, each labeled with masking tape in that same careful handwriting. Front door, basement, shed. Beneath the keys, a manila envelope contained documents. A deed, stamped and notarized, made out to future resident, 219 Oakmont Street. The property had been purchased 4 years ago, paid in full by someone named Harold Webb. No mortgage, no liens listed. At the bottom of the box, a handwritten letter on yellow legal paper, ink slightly smudged but legible. "If you found this," it began, "you need it. I bought this house when my wife was sick, thinking we'd fix it up together, have something to leave behind. She died before we could start. I don't have much time left either, the kind of sick you don't come back from. I tried to give it away properly through charities and programs, but the paperwork, the red tape, I'm too tired. So I'm doing it this way. The house needs work, but the bones are good. I've left what tools and supplies I could in the basement. The water's shut off, but the pipes are sound. Electric needs inspection, the roof leaks in the back bedroom. But it's yours if you want it. All I ask is you remember that people who love can't always stay, but they can leave something behind that matters. Make it count. H. Webb." I read it 3 times, looking for the catch, the clause, the moment where this turned into another cruel joke, but there was nothing. Just a dying man's last act of faith in strangers. Emma appeared at my elbow. "What does it say?" "It says," I had to stop, clear my throat. "It says we can stay, if we fix it up." She looked up at me with those dark eyes that saw too much. "For real?" "I think so. We'd have to make it safe, get the water running, convince the city to lift the condemnation order, but we can do that," she said, with the absolute certainty of 7. "You know how to build stuff." I used to. Before the layoff, before the scramble, before everything fell apart, I'd been decent with my hands. Framing, finish work, basic plumbing and electrical. But knowing and doing were different animals, especially when you were working without capital, without credit, without anything except the $5 in your pocket and a dead man's charity. We spent the rest of that afternoon doing reconnaissance. The front room and kitchen were rough but usable. The back bedroom Harold had mentioned was worse. A section of ceiling had collapsed, black mold spreading across one wall where rain had come through for months. The bathroom fixtures were dated but intact. The basement was dry, and true to his word, Harold had left tools. A hammer, screwdrivers, a handsaw, boxes of nails and screws, even a battery-powered drill with 2 spare batteries. By sunset, I'd made a decision. We'd stay, at least tonight. I'd use the $5 for a tarp and some basic supplies. Flashlight batteries, trash bags, work gloves. I'd spend tomorrow assessing what was possible. If it looked impossible, we'd move on. But if there was even a chance. I found Emma in the kitchen, sitting on the floor with her back against the wall, reading her library book by the last of the daylight coming through the window gaps. She looked up when I entered. "We're staying?" she asked. "Tonight. Maybe longer. We'll see." She nodded, solemn, then returned to her book. But I saw the corner of her mouth lift, just slightly. The first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. That night we slept on the front room floor, our sleeping bags spread on cardboard we'd found in the basement. The house creaked and settled around us, drafts finding every gap. But the roof over our heads was real, solid, ours, for now. Before I fell asleep, I thought about Harold Webb, a man I'd never meet, who'd never know who found his gift. I thought about his wife, about love that outlasts death, about the difference between giving up and letting go. Somewhere in the walls, I swear I heard the house breathing. Chapter 3. The first clues morning came through cracks in the boarded windows, thin bars of April light that made the dust visible as substance. Emma woke before me, which was new. Usually she fought consciousness, tried to steal a few more minutes before facing another day of navigating school while homeless. But this morning, she was sitting up, tracing something on the wall with her finger. "Dad," she said softly. "Look." I rolled over, body stiff from the floor. Where she pointed, I could make out faint pencil marks on the wallpaper, barely visible. Dates, measurements, names. A growth chart, I realized. Margaret, 6 years, 4 months. Margaret, 7 years, 2 months. The last entry. Margaret, 11 years, 8 months, dated 1987. Someone lived here, Emma said. A kid. Yeah. I sat up, studying the marks. Someone had measured their daughter's growth on this wall for 6 years. Had they moved away, grown up and moved on? The chart ended abruptly. No explanation, just that final measurement and then blank wall. While Emma got ready for school, washing up at the kitchen sink using bottled water I'd bought last week, I explored more carefully. The kitchen cabinets were empty except for mouse droppings and ancient shelf paper, but in the drawer beside the sink I found more clues. Receipts, old utility bills, a shopping list in faded ink, bread, milk, Margaret's medicine, paint for the porch. The mundane archaeology of a family that had lived here, worked here, loved here. In the living room closet, beneath a pile of water-damaged magazines, I found a small photo album. The plastic pages were stuck together, but I could make out images. A couple, young, standing in front of this house when it was new, or at least newly painted. The same couple, older, on the porch with a dark-haired girl who had to be Margaret. The final photo showed just the girl, maybe 11 or 12, sitting on the front steps with a black cat, both of them squinting into sunlight. No more photos after that. Something had ended. After I walked Emma to school, she insisted on walking the last block alone, maintaining the fiction that she lived in one of the nearby houses. I returned to 219 Oakmont with purpose. The $5 bill was gone, spent on tarp and batteries, but I had Harold's tools and a plan. First priority, secure one room. The back bedroom was unsalvageable for now, but the front room where we'd slept had potential. I spent the morning pulling down damaged wallpaper, sweeping debris, checking every floorboard for rot. The work was meditative, familiar, the kind of labor that let your mind wander while your hands stayed busy. By noon, I'd found more traces of the previous family. Someone had carved initials in the back of the closet door. MC plus DW 1985. A child's drawing taped inside the kitchen cabinet, colors faded but still visible. A stick figure family and a house with a red door. Under the stairs, a plastic bin contained children's books. The pages yellowed but intact. Dr. Seuss, Encyclopedia Brown, Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. I set them aside for Emma. The most significant find came when I was checking the basement for water damage. Behind the furnace, tucked in a space so narrow I almost missed it, I found a metal lockbox. No key, but the lock was old, rust compromised. 3 solid hits with a hammer and it popped open. Inside, more photographs, these ones loose and unorganized. The couple from the album, but now I could see the progression. Young and optimistic, then strained, then just the woman alone looking tired and decades older than the early photos suggested. A stack of medical bills, all for Margaret Carson. Hospital, specialists, experimental treatments. The amounts made my stomach turn. A letter from the bank, foreclosure notice dated 1992, and at the bottom, a child's drawing, crude but clear, of this house with a rainbow overhead, and words in uneven capitals. Thank you for my home. I love you, Margaret. I sat on the basement floor, the box open beside me, trying to piece together the story. A family who'd lived here, loved here, a sick child, medical bills that buried them, foreclosure, the house abandoned, condemned, forgotten, until Harold Webb, for reasons I'd never fully understand, bought it with his last resources and left it behind for whoever needed it most. The house wasn't just wood and nails. It was a repository of other people's dreams and losses, other people's fights to make something hold. If we were going to stay, we'd be adding our chapter to that story. The question was whether our chapter would end like theirs, or whether this time, someone would finally make it work. When I went to pick up Emma from school that afternoon, she asked what I'd found. I told her about Margaret, about the growth chart and the books and the drawings. She listened quietly, then asked, "Do you think she got better?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I hope so." "Me too," she said. Then after a pause, "Can we keep her books?" "Yeah," I said. "I think she'd like that. If you're enjoying this journey so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from." Chapter 4. The Work Begins. That night, using 2 of Harold's battery-powered work lights, I created a plan. On a piece of salvaged cardboard, I drew the house's floor plan and started a list. Immediate needs, medium-term goals, long-term dreams. The immediate list was sobering: secure the roof before the next rain, get water running at least to the kitchen, make the front room safe and weatherproof enough for Emma to sleep in properly. Everything else, fixing the back bedroom, dealing with the mold, replacing the porch boards, could wait. I had tools, but no materials, no money for supplies, no credit, no savings, no safety net. What I did have was time, ingenuity, and the desperate motivation of a father who'd found a chance to give his daughter walls and a door that locked. The next morning I started with the roof. I couldn't replace it, but I could patch the worst leaks. I'd seen a construction dumpster 6 blocks over, and where there's construction, there's often scrap. I left Emma at school and walked there with a salvaged shopping cart I'd found in the alley behind 219. The construction crew didn't care about the pile of damaged shingles, the bent plywood, the partial bundle of fiberglass insulation someone had left in the rain. I loaded the cart and pushed it home, wheels squeaking, aware of how I looked but past caring. On the roof, things were worse than I'd thought. The leak in the back bedroom was actually 3 leaks. The underlayment rotted through, 2 rafters showing early signs of serious damage. I couldn't fix it properly, but I could buy time. I spent 6 hours on that roof, using salvaged shingles and roofing tar I'd found in Harold's basement supplies, creating patches that wouldn't last a decade, but might last a season. The April sun was warm up there, and for stretches I forgot we were homeless, forgot the precariousness of our situation. I was just a carpenter again, solving problems, making things fit. When I climbed down, my hands were black with tar, and I'd reopened a cut on my palm from 2 weeks ago. But the patches held. I tested them with the hose. Still no water service, but the hose was there, connected to nothing. I'd have to figure out the water situation soon. Over the next week, I fell into a rhythm. Mornings, take Emma to school. Days, work on the house, scavenge materials, solve problems. Afternoons, pick up Emma, let her do homework in the house while I worked. Evenings, cook dinner on the camp stove I'd owned since before everything fell apart. Tell stories, pretend this was normal. The house revealed itself slowly. The kitchen cabinets were solid oak under the grime, probably worth refinishing if I ever had time for aesthetic work. The hardwood floors beneath the damaged carpet in the living room were scratched but beautiful. The bathroom plumbing, when I finally investigated, needed new supply lines, but the cast iron drain pipes were intact. Every discovery was a small calculation. Is this fixable with what I have, or will it require money I don't have? I made contact with a neighbor, Mrs. Chen, in her 70s, who'd lived 3 houses down for 40 years. She remembered the Carson family. The girl was sick, she told me over her chain-link fence. Something with her blood. They tried everything, bankrupted themselves. When they lost the house, they moved in with relatives upstate. I heard Margaret recovered, actually. Married, had kids, but they never came back here. Too many bad memories, I guess. She asked what I was doing at 219, and I told her some version of the truth, that I'd found the place abandoned, that I was doing some basic repairs, that my daughter and I needed a temporary spot. She studied me with intelligent eyes, taking in my worn clothes, my makeshift cart of salvaged materials, reading between the lines. "You need help with that roof?" she asked finally. I can't pay anyone. Did I ask for payment? She gestured to her garage. My husband was a contractor, died 5 years ago. All his tools are just sitting there. You can borrow whatever you need. And I've got some leftover paint in the shed if you're interested. Can't have the neighborhood looking too rough, can we? I almost cried. Instead, I said, "Thank you, I'll take good care of the tools." "I know you will," she said. "I can tell." With Mrs. Chen's tools, a real drill, a full socket set, a circular saw that purred, the work accelerated. I fixed the porch railing, making it safe for Emma to sit there in the evenings. I replaced 3 rotten porch boards with wood from a pallet I'd found behind the grocery store. I patched the holes in the living room walls with drywall compound I mixed from powder Harold had left, creating surfaces smooth enough to paint once we could afford paint. The house responded. That sounds mystical, but it's true. As I repaired it, it seemed to settle into itself, to remember what it was meant to be. The drafts lessened. The creaking at night became rhythmic, almost musical. Emma started calling it our house instead of the house, but reality was patient. We were squatters in a condemned building. Eventually, someone would notice. Eventually, someone would care. Chapter 5. The pattern emerges. 3 weeks into the work, I found the journal. I was replacing the damaged subfloor in the back bedroom, pulling up sections of plywood warped beyond salvation, when I saw it wedged between 2 joists. A composition notebook, the kind kids use in elementary school, wrapped in a plastic bag that had protected it from water damage. Margaret's journal. Her name was written on the cover in purple marker, and the first entry was dated January 1987. I am starting this journal because Dr. Matthews said writing might help me feel less scared. She would have been 7, the same age as Emma. I should have stopped reading, respected her privacy even across decades, but I couldn't. The entries chronicled her illness. Leukemia, I learned, acute lymphoblastic, and her family's struggle. Her father worked construction, her mother cleaned houses, and still the bills multiplied faster than they could pay them. Mom cried in the kitchen today, one entry read. She thought I was asleep, but I heard her tell Dad we might lose the house. I don't want to lose our house. Where would we go? Later entries documented treatments, hospital stays, small victories and crushing setbacks, but threaded through the medical narrative was something else. Her fierce love for this house. She described the view from her bedroom window, a oak tree that attracted cardinals. She wrote about helping her father paint the porch blue, about her mother planting roses, about the birthday party they'd thrown for her 9th year when she was in remission, everyone hopeful. The final entry, dated August 1991. We're moving next week. Dad says it's temporary, but Mom's eyes say it's forever. I carved our initials in the closet so the house will remember us. I'm not scared anymore about being sick. Dr. Matthews says I'm doing great. But I'm scared about forgetting what it felt like to have a home. If anyone reads this someday, take care of our house. It tried to keep us. It wasn't its fault. I sat on the exposed joists, the journal in my hands, and felt the weight of it. Margaret had survived her illness but lost her home. Harold had bought the house decades later, too sick to restore it himself, and passed it forward. Now Emma and I were here, trying to write a different ending. That night I showed Emma the journal. We read it together by flashlight, and when we finished she was quiet for a long time. We have to make it work, she finally said. For Margaret. I'm trying, sweetheart. I know. She looked around the front room, which we'd nearly finished. Walls patched, floor swept clean, windows we'd unboarded letting in real light. It's already better, right? Than when we found it? Yeah, I said. It's better. But better wasn't enough. I'd been tracking our situation, making lists, facing numbers. We still had no legal water service. The electric was disconnected and would require a licensed electrician to reconnect, plus payment of back fees I couldn't cover. The condemned notice was still on the door, and while no one had challenged us yet, eventually the city would conduct its 6-month follow-up inspection. When they did, they'd find us here, unlawfully occupying a condemned structure with a child. Social services would get involved. Emma would go to foster care while I didn't let myself think about where I'd go. I needed help, real help. But asking meant exposing us, meant risking Emma, meant admitting I couldn't do this alone. The next morning, I walked to the city offices downtown and asked to speak to someone about 219 Oakmont Street. The clerk directed me to code enforcement, where a tired-looking woman named Patricia listened to my story. I showed her the deed Harold had left. The letter explained that I was trying to bring the property up to code, that we needed the condemnation lifted. She pulled up the file. The property was condemned for structural damage, electrical hazards, and mold contamination. To lift that, you need licensed inspections proving all issues are resolved. That's going to run you several $1,000s in permits, inspections, and required professional work. Do you have that? No. Then I can't help you. And sir, she lowered her voice, you're not living there, are you? With the condemnation active, that's illegal. If code enforcement finds people in that house, they'll red tag it, which means immediate eviction and potential fines. We're not there, I lied. I'm just doing some basic repairs before I decide what to do with the property. She didn't believe me, I could tell, but she let it go. You've got 6 weeks until the follow-up inspection. After that, if nothing's changed, the city will likely start demolition proceedings. The owner, Harold Webb, according to this, is deceased. So the property would go to public auction, and someone will buy it for the land value, scrape the house, and build new. That's the reality. 6 weeks. That was May 30th. Not enough time to do everything that needed doing, even if I worked around the clock. Not enough time to earn the money for inspections and permits. Not enough time to make this legal. I walked back to 219 Oakmont Street in the spring drizzle, past Mrs. Chen's house where she waved from her window, past the overgrown yards and chain-link fences, back to the house that was trying so hard to be our home. Emma would be out of school in 2 hours. I needed to be there, needed to have dinner ready, needed to maintain the illusion that everything was manageable. But for the first time since finding Harold's letter, I let myself acknowledge the truth. We were probably going to lose this too. Chapter 6. The Storm. The storm came on a Tuesday night in early May, 3 weeks before the inspection deadline. The forecast had called for rain, not the wall of water and wind that hit at 9 p.m., turning the street into a river and testing every patch, every seal, every compromise I'd made in our repairs. Emma and I were in the front room when it started, her doing homework by battery lantern while I reviewed the list of what still needed doing before the inspection. The rain began as percussion, then became a roar. Within minutes, water was finding its way through gaps I thought I'd sealed. Around the window frames, through the ceiling where my roof patches were inadequate. Under the back door, I hadn't had time to properly weather strip. "Dad?" Emma's voice was small. "It's okay. Just a hard rain." But I was already moving, grabbing buckets from the basement, positioning them under the leaks, watching water spot the walls I'd just finished patching. In the back bedroom, the ceiling patch I'd made gave way with a sound like cardboard tearing, dumping accumulated water onto the exposed subfloor. The floor held barely, but I could see it sagging, joists straining under the weight. The power, what little we'd rigged illegally from Mrs. Chen's exterior outlet via extension cord, died. Complete darkness except for the lightning that lit the house in strobing white flashes. Emma found my hand. "Is it going to fall down?" she asked. "No," I said, with more confidence than I felt. "The bones are good, remember? It's held this long. It'll hold through tonight." We moved to the kitchen, the most sound room structurally. I spread our sleeping bags on the floor while rain hammered the windows. Every 30 seconds I made rounds, emptying buckets, checking for new leaks, assessing damage. By midnight we had 7 active leaks I was tracking. By 2 a.m. the back bedroom ceiling had 2 holes. By 4 a.m. I'd run out of containers and was using trash bags taped to the walls, funneling water into the bathtub. Emma slept through most of it, exhausted, trusting. I didn't sleep at all. When dawn came gray and wet, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I surveyed the damage. The front room, our main living space, had survived mostly intact, but the back bedroom was catastrophic. The ceiling was nearly gone, insulation hanging like stalactites, mold already visible on the exposed framing. The repairs I'd made had bought us 3 weeks, but this storm had undone half that work in one night. I sat on the front porch looking at the yard where Harold's promised rose bushes were trying to bloom despite decades of neglect, and let myself admit defeat. Even if I worked nonstop for 3 weeks, even if Mrs. Chen loaned me every tool her husband had owned, even if I scavenged every scrap of material in a 10-mile radius, I couldn't bring this house up to code before the inspection. I couldn't afford the required professional work. I couldn't make this legal. We'd have to leave, find another shelter, get back on the waiting list, send Emma back to the life we'd briefly escaped. The house would be demolished, Margaret's growth chart and Harold's gift erased, turned into a vacant lot or a flip property for someone with actual capital. Mrs. Chen appeared at her fence an hour later, surveying the damage. "Rough night," she observed. "Yeah, you're going to need professional help with that roof now. And the back room, that's mold remediation territory. Licensed work." "I know." She was quiet for a moment. "You planning to give up?" "I don't have a choice. I don't have the money for what this needs." "You have time. 3 weeks until the city inspection." She studied the house, professional assessment in her eyes. "You know what my husband used to say? Money buys speed, but community buys miracles. You've been doing this alone. Maybe that's the mistake. I can't ask people. You're not asking, I'm offering. Wednesday nights, the church 2 blocks over, does community dinner. Lot of retired contractors, carpenters, people with skills and time. Let me make some calls. You show up Wednesday, explain what you're trying to do, and we'll see what happens." I wanted to say no, wanted to protect my pride, wanted to avoid the humiliation of begging for help in front of strangers, but I looked at the house, at the For Margaret drawing Emma had taped to the kitchen window, at the growth chart visible through the front room doorway. "Okay," I said. Wednesday. That afternoon I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize, a reporter from the local paper asking about the renovation project at 219 Oakmont. Mrs. Chen, it turned out, had a nephew who worked in media. He'd heard about the house, about Harold's letter, about a homeless father trying to bring it back to life. They wanted to do a story, human interest piece. I called back, suspicious. "What kind of story?" "The good kind," the reporter said. "Small acts of kindness, community revival, second chances. I'd like to talk to you, see the house, hear what you're trying to do. No pressure, but sometimes these stories, They generate support, resources. People remember what it's like to need help. Sometimes exposure is salvation. Sometimes it's the thing that destroys you. Let me think about it, I said. That night, I talked to Emma about the storm damage, about the impossible timeline, about the choice ahead. Tell our story publicly, ask for help, risk the attention and judgment and potential involvement of authorities who might decide a condemned house wasn't appropriate housing for a 7-year-old, or walk away now, preserve what dignity we had left, return to the life we'd known. She thought about it with her serious face, the one that made her look older than 7. If we don't ask, she finally said, we definitely lose. If we do ask, maybe we lose, but maybe we don't. That's better odds. She was right, of course she was right. If this restoration story has you hooked, hit like. It helps us bring more lost places back to life. Chapter 7. The Reveal. The newspaper story ran on Sunday, front page of the local section. Homeless father's impossible dream, restoring a condemned house one scrap at a time. The reporter, to his credit, got it right. He told Harold's story, Margaret's story, our story. He included photos of the house, before and after shots that made the progress visible, even as they highlighted how much remained. He quoted Margaret's journal entry about taking care of the house. He ended with the inspection deadline and the question of whether we'd make it. I expected nothing. Maybe a few sympathetic comments, maybe someone dropping off some paint or lumber. What happened instead was something I hadn't dared imagine. Monday morning, my borrowed phone, a basic flip model Mrs. Chen had given me, started ringing. First call, a retired electrician named Tom who'd read the story and wanted to donate his time to rewire the house properly, pass inspection, no charge for labor. Second call, a roofing company offering materials at cost plus free installation by their crew on their next day off. Third call, a woman from the housing nonprofit asking about our situation, offering to help navigate the permitting process, maybe find grant money for the required professional inspections. By Monday afternoon, there were people at the house. Tom, the electrician, assessing the electrical panel, making lists of what he'd need. 2 volunteers from the church Mrs. Chen had mentioned, starting mold remediation in the back bedroom with proper masks and equipment someone had donated. A plumber checking the water lines, saying he could get us reconnected by Wednesday if I could cover the connection fee, which a local business owner who'd read the story called to say he'd pay for. Tuesday brought more. A landscaping crew showed up unannounced and spent 4 hours clearing the overgrown yard, trimming trees, making the place look inhabited again. Someone delivered a pallet of lumber, new lumber, not salvaged, for the back bedroom subfloor. The city councilwoman for our district stopped by, surveyed the work and made a call on her cell that resulted in the inspection being moved back 2 weeks to give us time to finish properly. This is city property we're talking about saving, she told me. That has value. And your story has value. We're not going to make this harder than it needs to be. Wednesday, the roofing crew arrived at dawn. 6 guys with decades of experience between them, unloading shingles and underlayment and equipment. By sunset, 2019 Oakmont had a new roof. Professional, warranted, the kind of roof that would last 20 years. I stood in the yard watching them work and I couldn't process it. 3 weeks ago, I'd been patching leaks with salvaged materials and hope. Now I was watching strangers give us something I could never have afforded. That evening, during a break while Tom was installing new outlets, I went back to the basement. I'd been so focused on the immediate work that I'd barely touched the back half of the space, where Harold had stored supplies. Now, with real light from the work lamps, I explored. Behind a stack of paint cans, I found another box, wooden this time, with a brass latch that opened easily. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, tools. Not just any tools, custom pieces, handcrafted, the kind a master carpenter makes for himself. Chisels with turned handles, marking gauges in exotic woods, a dovetail saw with a blade that still gleamed, and a letter, unsealed, in Harold's handwriting. To whoever takes on this house, it began. These were my father's tools and his father's before that. 3 generations of Webbs built half this town with these tools. I'm the last Webb, and I have no children to pass them to. But tools aren't meant to sit in boxes. They're meant to work, meant to create, meant to be part of building something that lasts. If you're reading this, you're trying to make this house live again. That makes you family. These are yours now. Use them well. Build something that outlasts you. H. Webb. I sat on the basement floor, holding tools older than me, older than my parents, tools that had built schools and churches and homes across this town for 90 years. Harold hadn't just left us a house. He'd left us a legacy, a tradition, a connection to everyone who'd ever tried to make something permanent in a temporary world. When I came upstairs, Emma was helping Tom by holding the flashlight while he worked. She looked up when I entered. "What's in the box?" "History," I said, "and a gift." That night after the volunteers had left and it was just Emma and me in the house that was finally starting to feel possible, I told her about the tools, about 3 generations of webs, about the weight of making something that lasts. "We're going to finish this," I said. "Not just for us, for Margaret, for Harold, for everyone who ever lived here and loved here. We're going to make this house stand." She nodded, serious. "And then what? After it's done? Then we live here. We make it ours. We add our chapter to the story. And if someone needs help someday like we did," I thought about that, about Harold's letter, about Mrs. Chen's husband's tools, about the electrician and the roofers and the strangers who'd shown up because someone told our story. "Then we help them," I said, "however we can. That's how this works, I think. You receive, and then later, you give. The circle keeps going." She smiled, the first full smile I'd seen from her since before we'd lost the apartment. "I like that." In the basement, Harold's tools waited. In the walls, Margaret's initials remembered. In the rafters, new shingles held against the weather. And in the front room, a homeless father and his daughter imagined futures plural, not singular. The house was breathing again, and so were we. Chapter 8, Community Rising. The next 2 weeks became a blur of coordinated work and small miracles. Tom finished the electrical, and when the city inspector came, she not only approved but complimented the quality. "Better than code," she said. "This'll outlast the neighborhood." The plumber reconnected our water, and the first time I turned on the kitchen tap and watched clean water flow, Emma actually cheered. That night we washed dishes in our own sink, used our own bathroom, took showers that were awkward and cold, but ours. The next morning, someone from the hardware store delivered a water heater, used but functional, and installed it for free. The mold remediation crew finished the back bedroom, and volunteers replaced the ceiling drywall, properly this time with vapor barrier and everything. I used Harold's tools, those 3-generation chisels and planes, to trim new baseboards, to hang a door that closed square, to make finish work that would have made any web proud. Mrs. Chen showed up one afternoon with curtains. "From my daughter's old apartment," she explained. "She upgraded, but these are still good. A teacher from Emma's school dropped off books. I heard you're building a library in there," she said. "Not just children's books, adult fiction, repair manuals, a cookbook, an encyclopedia set from the 90s. A house should have books," she added. The church community brought food. Not pity portions, but real meals. Casseroles, fresh bread, vegetables from someone's garden. "You're doing physical labor," they explained. "You need to eat properly." People I'd never met became invested in our success. The story had spread beyond the original article. Local news did a 2-minute segment. Someone started a social media fundraiser that generated enough to cover the inspection fees and buy proper furniture. A bed frame for Emma, a couch for the front room, a kitchen table where we could eat like a family. But it wasn't all easy. The attention attracted skeptics. Someone reported us to social services claiming we were endangering a child by living in a construction zone. A caseworker came, unannounced, on a Thursday afternoon. I'd been dreading this moment since the story ran. Her name was Jennifer, and she walked through the house with a clipboard checking off items. I followed, explaining what we'd done, showing the permits Tom had filed, the inspection certificates, the progress. Emma sat on the front porch, reading, trying to look casual while her future hung on this stranger's assessment. 20 minutes later, Jennifer closed her clipboard and looked at me directly. "You understand this was flagged as a potential endangerment situation?" "Yes." "You understand that living in a condemned building with a minor is typically grounds for removal of the child from the home?" "Yes." She glanced around the front room. The patched walls, the refinished floors, the curtains and the windows. "This isn't condemned anymore. Not in any meaningful sense. You've done quality work here, better than most Section 8 apartments I inspect." She paused. "But I need to be clear. You need to get this resolved legally. The condemnation needs to be officially lifted, permits finalized, property taxes addressed. You have 2 weeks until the official follow-up inspection. If that doesn't go well, I understand." "Good." She headed for the door, then stopped. "Off the record? My mom was a single parent. We lived in rough places, I get it. You're doing right by your daughter. Keep doing that. After she left, Emma came inside. Are we okay? We're okay. But we need to finish this. Properly, legally, completely. 2 weeks. The final push was exhausting. Every surface needed finishing touches. The back bedroom, now repaired, needed painting. The porch boards I'd replaced early on needed staining to match the weathered wood around them. The yard, while cleared, needed actual landscaping. The paperwork alone was daunting. Occupancy permits, utility account transfers, property tax reconciliation. The housing nonprofit helped with the bureaucratic maze. They discovered that Harold had prepaid property taxes for 5 years when he bought the house, so we weren't in arrears. They helped file for a hardship reduction on the water reconnection deposit. They found a pro bono lawyer who reviewed the deed and confirmed it was legally structured. The future resident designation was unusual but valid. 10 days before the final inspection, we had a house meeting. Emma and I sat at our new kitchen table, an act so normal it felt revolutionary, and made a plan. What happens after we pass inspection? Emma asked. We register the deed in our name, pay the minimal property taxes going forward, keep the utilities current, live here. And then, I'd been thinking about this, about Harold's tools, about Mrs. Chen's generosity, about the electrician and the roofers and everyone who'd helped. Then we pay it forward, however we can. Over the next week I started small. Mrs. Chen's back steps needed repair, her husband's tools and my labor free. The church needed someone to fix water damage in their community room. Harold's legacy and my hands donated. The teacher who'd brought books mentioned her classroom sink was leaking. Solved in an hour on a Saturday. Emma noticed. We're helping, she observed. Yeah, because people helped us. Exactly. The day before the final inspection, the house was finished. Not perfect. The back bedroom paint could use a second coat. The porch could use a new railing eventually. The landscaping was basic, but it was sound, safe, legal, livable. More than I'd imagined when I'd found that wallet 4 months ago. That night I walked through every room remembering what each had looked like that first day. The collapsed ceiling, the water damage, the condemned notice on the door, and now, tight walls, working lights, clean floors, a home. In the basement I found one last box I'd somehow missed. Small cardboard labeled in Harold's writing. For the house. Inside, a bronze plaque, simple but elegant. It read, The Webb Carson Marshall House, built by hope, restored by community, held by love.